Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to be diving into the whole BRICS currency situation. I mean,
Yeah,
things are heating up.
absolutely.
President-elect Trump's already talking about 100% tariffs,
Yeah.
and the BRICS bloc itself has just gotten a whole lot bigger.
hmm
So are you ready to unpack why a new currency is causing such a stir globally?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. Well, to help me break this whole thing down,
Yeah.
I've got an expert here with me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first things first, can you just give us a little background on what exactly BRICS is and why they're even considering ditching the dollar?
Yeah, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Right.
It's a group of major emerging economies, and recently they've added new members.
I was going to say,
Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE. So
wow, it's getting big.
it's a big block now. And the thing is, they're not really happy with the US dollar just dominating 80% of global trade,
Yeah.
They feel like it gives the US a really unfair advantage.
So it's kind of like the dollar is the king of the financial jungle,
Mm.
and BRICS is like, okay, we're tired of playing by the king's rules.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy because, the US can borrow money so cheaply because everyone needs dollars.
Right.
And they can run these huge deficits but still have a stable exchange rate.
Yeah, they've got all the power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the muscle that BRICS doesn't really have, and that's part of why they're looking at this new currency idea.
So they're feeling a bit powerless.
Mhm.
Like the U.S. can just kind of use the dollar as like a weapon against them.
Yeah, it's about, gaining some financial independence and not being so vulnerable to things like sanctions.
Makes sense.
The idea isn't totally new, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it actually kind of first popped up after the 2008 financial crisis
Oh, wow. Yeah.
when, the whole global banking system almost collapsed because of problems that largely started in the U.S.
Yeah, that was a mess.
Yeah, and that got BRICS thinking hey, maybe we need a backup plan if this dollar system, goes haywire again.
Right, like a financial safety net.
Exactly.
Okay, so where are we now in terms of actually developing this BRICS currency?
Well, at the 2023 summit in South Africa, they all agreed to at least formally study
Okay.
the feasibility of a common currency.
Uh-huh.
Leaders acknowledged that that's a long-term project.
Right.
But even that agreement showed they were serious about, wanting to challenge the dollar.
Right.
Then at the Kazan summit, just in October 2024,
Mm-hmm.
Putin kind of threw this curveball and proposed a blockchain-based system,
Oh, wow.
mainly as a way to avoid Western sanctions, but that idea didn't really gain much traction.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like a fully fledged BRICS currency is happening anytime soon.
No.
So what's the most realistic next step for them?
Well, for now, the focus is on increasing trade between the BRICS countries
Okay.
and using their own local currencies to do it.
Okay.
Baby steps. But even that, sends a message.
Yeah, I can imagine. But let's play devil's advocate for a minute. How realistic is this whole unified BRICS currency thing?
Yeah.
Given how different all their economies are and their political systems.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
Right.
We're talking about, different levels of development, different growth rates.
Right.
Some countries are democracies, some are more authoritarian.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
It is. And just to give you an idea, China alone accounts for 70% of the BRICS GDP.
Oh, wow.
That's $17.8 trillion.
That's a lot.
Yeah, they also have a trade surplus and they hold huge dollar reserves.
Right.
Then you have India, which is democratic,
Right.
but they have a $3.7 trillion economy and a trade deficit.
Right.
So getting all these countries, especially these contrasting giants,
Yeah.
to agree on a system that benefits everybody, that's really tough.
Yeah, like herding cats.
Exactly. And even the euro took over 40 years to develop.
Oh, wow.
So I think we're unlikely to see a BRICS currency, actually being traded like the dollar or the euro anytime soon.
Okay, so full convertibility is
Yeah.
probably a ways off.
Yeah.
What's the most likely scenario then for a BRICS currency in the near future?
The most likely scenario is something that's used just for trade within the BRICS bloc.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be pegged to a basket of currencies and commodities, kind of like how the IMF's special drawing rights works.
Yeah.
The SDR is this international reserve asset,
Right.
a way to supplement a country's official reserves.
I see.
Some experts are even talking about a digital BRICS currency,
Oh, interesting.
but that's a whole other can of worms we can open later.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
For sure. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we have to talk about Trump's threat of these 100% tariffs.
Yeah.
If BRICS moves forward with this new currency,
Mm-hmm.
Is that just like political posturing, or should we be worried?
Well, South Africa came out pretty quickly and said there's no immediate plan for a BRICS currency.
Okay.
So it seemed like maybe Trump overreacted a little.
Yeah.
But his reaction really shows how worried the U.S. is about potentially losing its control over global finance.
So it's less about the tariffs themselves and more about
Yeah.
the U.S. trying to hold onto its financial power.
Exactly. It's a sign that the U.S. wants to stay on top.
Right.
And what's interesting is that this is actually kind of a change from Trump's earlier position.
Oh, really?
Yeah. During his first term, he actually wanted a weaker dollar.
Uh-huh.
But his recent threats have actually strengthened the dollar.
Okay.
And currencies like the yuan, the rupee, and the rand have all weakened.
Interesting.
Even gold has taken a hit.
So a weaker dollar was good for Trump before,
Well,
but now he wants a strong dollar.
it all comes down to context.
Okay.
A weaker dollar helps U.S. exports,
Right.
which is what he was focused on before.
Okay.
But now that BRICS is challenging the dollar globally,
Right.
he sees a strong dollar as this way to maintain U.S. power
Interesting.
and influence.
That makes sense. But could this, tough stance backfire on him?
Yeah.
Could it hurt ties with BRICS? I mean, a lot of those countries are major U.S. trading partners.
For sure, this could turn into like a trade war where everyone loses.
Right.
And it also risks making inflation worse, both globally and in the U.S.,
Right.
which could then slow down economic growth even more.
So what we're seeing is this high-stakes game of financial chess
Yes,
with potentially huge consequences for everybody.
absolutely.
What are the key players saying about this whole potential power shift?
Well, Trump has said
I can only imagine.
in his very blunt way that BRICS can find another sucker if they want to replace the dollar.
Oh, wow. Subtle.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words.
No, he does not. What about the BRICS leaders? How are they responding to all this pressure?
Putin sees this as part of this bigger trend,
Okay.
national currencies gaining more traction,
Right.
the dollar becoming less appealing. He calls it an erosion of the dollar's dominance.
But he thinks this is bigger than BRICS,
Yeah.
like a global shift that's already happening.
Exactly. And this is where economists are really debating how realistic this BRICS currency is.
Okay.
Some say it's just not going to work. Right.
Because of all the economic and political differences within BRICS.
Right.
But others argue that all this pressure from Trump could actually backfire
Uh-huh.
and speed up the move away from the dollar.
Wow. So it really does feel like we're on the edge of a currency war.
Yeah.
And it's not just about money. It's about power and influence.
It is.
And who gets to call the shots in the global economy.
Yeah. You said it perfectly. The U.S. wants to keep calling the shots,
Right.
and BRICS wants more independence.
Right.
So this tension is going to be around for a while.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, though.
Yeah.
But before we move on to talking about all the potential fallout, what's the one key thing you think our listeners should keep in mind as this whole thing plays out?
Keep an eye on how countries are actually doing their trade deals.
Okay.
If you see a real move towards using national currencies, that's a big sign that the dollar's power is slipping.
And that could even affect the currency we're all using in our everyday lives. Exactly. It might affect what you're using in the future, too.
Wow. That's a scary thought. All right, we'll be right back to unpack all of that after a quick break. So before the break, we were talking about how countries are starting to use their own currencies for trade deals.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for, regular people like us?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Think about it right now. When you buy something online from another country,
Uh-huh.
you're probably paying in U.S. dollars.
Right.
Even if the seller's in Europe or Asia.
Yeah, that's true.
But as more countries move away from the dollar, that could change.
So you're saying I might end up paying for my coffee beans in Brazilian runs.
Yeah.
Or my new phone in Chinese yuan.
Exactly.
That seems kind of complicated.
It can be a little overwhelming for sure.
Yeah.
But that's where this idea of a digital BRICS currency comes in.
Okay, this is what I've been waiting for.
Right.
Let's talk digital currency.
Right.
What would it look like? How would it even work?
Imagine a digital token, kind of like a cryptocurrency,
Okay.
but backed by the whole economic power of all the BRICS nations.
Mm-hmm.
You could use it for seamless transactions across borders.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a universal digital currency just for the BRICS countries.
So like Bitcoin, but on a much bigger scale.
Yes, but with one key difference.
Okay.
Bitcoin is decentralized.
Right.
It's not controlled by any government.
Okay.
A digital BRICS currency would probably be issued and regulated by like some central authority.
Okay, so maybe like a new BRICS central bank or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe like a group of their existing central banks working together.
So would it have like the backing of governments, which would probably make people feel more comfortable using it?
Exactly, especially for like bigger purchases and stuff.
Right. That makes sense.
And because it would be digital, it could bypass the SWIFT system.
Hold on, what's SWIFT?
SWIFT stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It's basically this messaging system that connects banks all over the world so they can transfer money securely.
So that's how most international payments happen now.
Yeah, it's been like the backbone of global finance for decades.
Wow.
But the U.S. has also used it to enforce sanctions.
Oh, I see.
And that's a big reason why BRICS wants to find alternatives.
So the digital BRICS currency would give them a way to like sidestep those sanctions.
That's one of the main goals.
Okay.
But there could also be some benefits for regular people.
Oh, really? Like what?
Think about how much it costs to send money overseas right now.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Those fees could be way lower with a digital BRICS currency.
Okay.
And because it's digital, the transactions could be processed much faster.
That sounds pretty convenient.
Yeah, especially if you've got family in BRICS countries or you do business there.
Right, but a digital currency controlled by governments.
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit like Big Brother, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a big concern for sure. Privacy advocates worry that governments could use it to track people's spending or even censor transactions.
So that's definitely a red flag. Are there any other downsides we should be thinking about?
Security is a big one.
Okay.
A system handling this much money would be a huge target for hackers.
Yes, for sure.
So BRICS would have to invest a lot in cybersecurity to make sure the system is stable and prevent fraud.
And I imagine there are a ton of technical hurdles, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like launching a digital currency this big, it's like building a financial spaceship.
Exactly. You need a really strong digital infrastructure that can handle tons of transactions across all these different countries.
Right.
And they all have different levels of technology.
That's true.
So it's a challenge.
And what about all the legal and regulatory stuff?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other layer.
Like even within one country, the rules around digital currencies are still being figured out.
Right.
So trying to get a whole group of nations on the same page.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. And then there's the fact that not everyone in BRICS is even on board with this idea.
Oh, really?
Some countries might not want to give up control over their own monetary policy, or they might be worried about what it would do to their national currencies.
So lots of potential roadblocks.
Yeah.
What's the overall feeling right now? Is there like real excitement for this, or is it mostly hype?
It's kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
There's definitely growing interest, especially with BRICS expanding and tensions with the U.S. rising. But a lot of experts are saying it's way too early to tell.
Okay.
Like, we're a long way from actually seeing a digital BRICS currency in action.
It kind of reminds me of all the buzz around Facebook's Libra project a few years ago.
Yeah.
That didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Libra faced a ton of regulatory hurdles, and people just weren't using it.
Right.
A digital BRICS currency could run into the same problems.
Yeah, even with governments backing it. So what should we be looking for to see if this is actually going to happen or if it's going to fizzle out?
Look for concrete actions from BRICS.
Okay.
Are they building a common digital payments platform?
Right.
Are there central banks working together on digital currency research?
Okay.
Those are signs that they're serious.
So actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, exactly, especially in finance.
What about like the bigger picture, geopolitics? How could that affect a digital BRICS currency?
If things between BRICS and the West keep getting worse, it could push them to create their own financial system even faster.
To get away from U.S. influence.
Exactly.
So it sounds like this whole digital currency thing is really tied up in this global power struggle.
It's not just about technology or economics. It's about geopolitics and who's going to have the power in the 21st century.
Right. So we've talked about why BRICS wants a new currency. We've talked about this whole digital currency idea. But all this talk about moving away from the dollar has got me thinking, what happens if the dollar actually loses its top spot?
Right.
What would that world even look like?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. To answer it, we need to look at what could happen if the whole financial system changes.
Yeah.
So let's go there. What are some of the things that could happen if the dollar's reign ends?
Well, imagine a world where power is more spread out,
Okay.
where instead of one main currency,
Mm-hmm.
you've got several regional currencies
Right.
and trading blocks all competing.
So not just one big system, but more like a patchwork of different financial arrangements.
Exactly. And that could lead to more competition between countries and currencies,
Okay.
which could be good or bad.
How so?
It could lead to more innovation and give people more choices, but it could also make things unstable.
Right, as the world adjusts.
Yeah, exactly.
What would it mean for us, though?
Yeah.
Like, how would this shift in financial power actually affect our lives?
It could affect everything.
Wow.
From how much things cost to how stable our investments are.
Mm.
It could even change global trade and the balance of power between countries.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
Maybe we should dive into those domino effects a little deeper when we come back.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
We'll be right back to explore what a post-dollar world might look like. Okay, so we're back and ready to really dig into what a world without the U.S. dollar on top might actually look like.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where this goes, but I have to admit I'm a little nervous too.
Yeah, I get it. We're talking about like a fundamental shift in the global financial system.
Right.
Something that could affect every part of our lives.
So before the break, you were talking about how a weaker dollar could change everything from like the prices we see at the store to like how stable our investments are.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of walk us through how that would actually work?
Yeah, let's start with global trade.
Okay.
Right now, pretty much all international transactions are done in U.S. dollars. But if other currencies start to become more important, like that potential BRICS currency we were talking about,
Right.
we could see a big shift in how goods and services are priced and traded.
So instead of seeing prices in dollars, we might see them in euros, yuan,
Yeah.
or even like BRICS units.
Exactly. And that could have a huge impact on businesses.
Right. Especially ones that do a lot of international trade.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine you're a company that imports electronics from China.
Okay.
If you suddenly have to pay in yuan instead of dollars, you have to worry about exchange rate fluctuations that you didn't have to deal with before.
So as a whole new level of like complexity and risk.
Totally. It could be a real headache for businesses.
Yeah.
And it's not just individual companies that would feel it. Whole economies could be affected.
Wow.
Like countries that export a lot of stuff to the U.S. could really struggle if the dollar gets much weaker.
So this shift could totally reshape global trade.
Yeah.
What about investments? Would people have to rethink where they put their money?
Absolutely. Right now, U.S. Treasury bonds are seen as like one of the safest investments you can make.
Yeah.
But if the dollar isn't seen as a safe haven anymore, investors might start buying bonds in other currencies like euros or yuan.
So the U.S. could lose its advantage in attracting global capital.
Yeah.
Which would make it harder and more expensive for them to borrow money.
Exactly. And that could have a domino effect on the whole U.S. economy.
Wow.
Potentially impacting interest rates, government spending, even things like infrastructure projects.
You mentioned earlier that a weaker dollar could also mean higher prices for like everyday things.
Yeah.
How would that work?
Well, think about all the stuff we buy from other countries. Clothes, electronics, coffee, even chocolate.
Yeah, basically everything.
Right. If the dollar weakens, all those imports get more expensive.
So a weaker dollar equals higher prices at the store.
It's definitely possible.
Not good.
There are a lot of things that affect inflation, of course.
Right.
But a declining dollar could definitely make prices go up.
And then people would need higher wages to keep up.
Right.
Which could make inflation even worse.
Exactly. It can be a really hard cycle to break.
Okay, so a weaker dollar could have all these economic consequences. But what about geopolitics? Could this change the balance of power between countries?
Absolutely. For a long time, the dollar has given the U.S. a ton of power on the world stage.
Right.
It's allowed them to do things like impose sanctions, influence trade policies, and even project military power more effectively.
So it's about more than just money. It's about power and influence.
Exactly. But if we move to a new financial system,
Right.
one where a lot of different currencies and trading blocks are competing, the U.S. could lose some of that power.
So other countries like China or the BRICS nations would have more say in how things work.
Yeah, that's one possibility. It could lead to what's called a multipolar world, where no one country or group is in charge.
Some people would probably see that as a good thing.
Yeah, a move towards a more balanced world.
Right. But wouldn't that create some new challenges too?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And maybe even some new conflicts.
It's definitely not a simple situation. A multipolar world could mean more competition for resources,
Right.
markets, and influence.
Yeah.
It could also create new security risks as countries adjust to a less predictable world.
So there's both good and bad that could come from this shift.
Exactly. It's a time of big change, and we don't know what's going to happen. It depends on how countries handle this new landscape.
Yeah. Will they work together or will they fight?
Right. Will they build bridges or walls?
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like we've uncovered this whole other layer of how the world really works.
It's been great exploring all this with you and with our listeners.
Yeah.
I hope everyone listening has a better understanding now of how connected global finance and geopolitics really are.
I think so too. It's a good reminder that we're all part of this bigger story that's constantly changing as we wrap up this deep dive. Is there any final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Just stay curious, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep exploring.
That's great advice.
The world is a fascinating place.
It is.
And there's always something new to discover.
Well said. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for coming along with us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.